climate change in agriculture. In this webinar, our theme will be vegetation, evolution, agroforestry, and climate change. And for that, we have two excellent colleagues, Professor Anastasia Pantera and Assistant Professor Mr. George Fotiadis from the Agricultural University of Athens, the Department of Forestry and Natural Environment Management. We will share with us their knowledge and opinions on these matters. I think that Professor Pantera will be the first to start. I would like to ask you to keep your microphones muted during the speeches, and afterwards we'll have the time to ask questions and opinions or whatever you like. Just to be without a noise, if you want something, please use the raise hand feature on Zoom. So, Professor Pantera, I think that you can start.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor and I'm very happy to be here. I'm just trying to find, okay, yeah, you just gave me the, okay, to share my screen. Okay, so I hope that everybody is able to see my screen right now.
Yes, I think it's okay.
Okay. So it is great to be here. I think this it's a very interesting seminar. It's a very interesting series actually of seminars. So I'm quite happy that I was asked to participate and contribute to this seminar. What I will talk to you and share with you today is the concept of agroforestry and climate change. And since most of us come from the Mediterranean basin, I am going to give a special emphasis to, of course, our homeland, which is the Mediterranean basin. And okay, so I don't know how many of you are familiar with the concept of agroforestry, but I thought of organizing my presentation in 3 different sectors. The one would be to present you agroforestry. The second part would be what is the connection of agroforestry and the Mediterranean basin, and then try to collate all this information and make a summary of how these issues actually connect and interrelate. And actually agroforestry can prove you, if I may, that agroforestry can be a very sustainable and a very useful, actually, climate smart farming solution. So to begin with, what is agroforestry? There are there are many definitions of agroforestry. So I'm going to share some with you. Okay, I have pointed out in red the important words that actually, the keywords that would help you understand agroforestry. So more or less, it's a land use system. It involves woody and perennials. It's on the same unit, agricultural crops, animals, and it is arranged in time and in space. So please note the keywords: land use, woody perennials, annual crops, agroforestry, animals. So one of the first books that I have read and I was very fascinated about it was that of McDickin and Vergara, and it was agroforestry, of course. So what these researchers said was that agroforestry is, again, land use that involves deliberate retention, introduction of mixture of trees or other woody perennials, crop and animals, production fields to benefit from the resultant ecological and economic interactions. So it is a sustainable system. It's a land use sustainable system that increases total production, combines agricultural crops and forest plants and or animals simultaneously or sequentially, and applies management practices that are compatible with the cultural patterns of the local population. So this is one of the oldest definitions. And please note that the keywords are more or less similar with the previous one: land use, woody perennials, crop, animals, interaction, sustainability, which is a word that is quite often used. It's used more and more lately, which is actually point out the importance of agroforestry systems. So another old and new definition says from Professor Nair, PK Nair, and Rosa Mosquera Losada, is that agroforestry is a land use practice that combines trees, crops, and livestock on the same area of land in all spatial or temporal arrangements. So please again note, irrespectively of the definition, the keywords are the same. So the latest definition, which I have been working in a FP7 project, which was named AgroForward. So the definition of agroforestry we have used was the practice of deliberately integrating woody vegetation, trees or shrubs, with crop and livestock to benefit from the resulting ecological and economic interactions. Again, similar keywords. In short, and actually trying to bring all these definitions with the present situation, because you know that in EU we talk about a lot of climate change and actually climate mitigation and all this. So what more or less is, in simple words, what is agroforestry? It's a farming system where we are trying to take a total actually use of the available space above and below ground. And more or less, why we're doing that? We're doing that because we want to take the maximum product output, whereas we are just using the minimum entrance. And of course, this whole system is sustainable. It has to be sustainable, because nowadays, as you probably have already hear about it, sustainability is becoming more and more important because of all these discussions that have been going on for the past years concerning climate change and climate mitigation and adaptation of farming. So here, the background is something that I have done. Actually, the background is became from two pictures. Okay, so this is a tree. It can be any tree. I'm going to give you more information in a while. That is combined or with annual crops and or livestock. And of course, some of you may ask, how can you combine the livestock with an annual crop? Well, this is why in the previous definitions, we have actually pointed out that it can be, the arrangement, it's different in space, but also in time. So the livestock can come afterwards, after the crops have been concluded their cycle. So this is when we introduce the livestock, and it's a very nice way actually to clear up the land after the annual farming practice. So one of the most typical agroforestry system is the oasis. And here is a picture from one of the numerous oases that there are in Tunisia. This is from Tunisia. And actually, more or less, this is the concept of agroforestry. Here, you can see the trees. You can see the annual crop, which can be henna or some other annual crop. And you can see the variety of actually different species. And the goal is what? The goal is actually to take full advantage of this whole system, but in a way that is sustainable. That means that we're going to have production also this year and next year and the other year. And this is what actually means sustainability. So it is used in a way that it's not going to, it's going to be, it's going to provide the farmers with all the available means to keep these systems in time, okay? And I'm using as an expression, make farmers happy, because farmers, in a way, I'm using this term in the way that farmers are happy when they have a good production. And of course, they get rewarded for their efforts and the money they have been placing in this enterprise, because it is an enterprise. Farming is an enterprise. So another key point about agroforestry is also that you take a good use of what is there. This is actually a very important also concept that is used not only in agroforestry, but everywhere. So I was also, I'm just placed this picture here because I've been also very much impressed from Tunisia, because this is in the borders of the edge, actually, in the beginning of the desert. So here you can see people are trying to do what? Take advantage of what is available. They haven't been using wire fences, but they have used whatever is there. So to make their fences, and also to support the soil, and also, of course, to prevent the desertification of the area. So more or less, I think I hope I have been quite actually clear of what is agroforestry. So why is climate smart? Why it is a climate smart option? So here I'm using the definition of FAO. So what's climate smart agriculture? It's an approach that helps to guide actions needed to transform and reorient agricultural system to efficiently support development. So keywords: development, ensure food security. Keyword: food security, where? In a changing climate. So climate smart agriculture aims to tackle three main objectives: sustainably increasing agricultural productivity and incomes, adapting and building resilience to climate change, and reducing or removing greenhouse gas emissions where possible. So I think that in the previous definition of agroforestry, more or less you can see some common keywords that they also appear here. And so here is the position that I have found this definition of FAO, just in case someone wants to take a look at it or check it. And so here you can see some examples from agroforestry systems throughout the European continent. And the pictures derived from the AgForward project. So here you can see the combination. This is from England, this is from Spain, this is from Italy. So more or less what you see, it is something the opposite of a monocrop agroforestry. So here you have two types of crops. This is the annual, and this is the trees. Here you have the trees, and you have the chestnuts, and the chestnuts are being used. The good quality chestnuts are being used for the production and the candies and for food and consumption, but also the remaining of the chestnuts are being used by the wildlife or even livestock. The same is here. So you can see here you have the production, the tree production. It's an apple or anything. It could be anything else. And on the below ground, you can see the sheep grazing. This is from another picture from Italy, and you can find information about these systems in the Ag4Word project website. And here you can see the chicken, that they're more or less, they're clearing the land below the olive trees. And I'm going to show you, so this is more or less where you can have access to this information of these systems. But further in my presentation, I'm going to also give you some pictures from our own experiments. So more or less, if you want to talk about agroforestry, you need to talk about trees, understory, and the livestock. So what could they be? They could be anything. They could be natural, or they can be planted by us, artificially planted. They can be any type of tree that provides something. They could be just provide nothing else but some ecosystem services. It's not necessarily to be something like a productive tree. Okay, so the tree forms the above ground, the overstory, and on the understory, you can find any type of annual crop, either for feed for animals or for production, or the livestock. The livestock could be anything. And we also have here, I'm just mentioning this, we have also some special forms of agroforestry, which is bees for honey production and silk with Morus arborea. So more or less, to conclude, in the agroforestry system, as I said, trees could be anything, and livestock, I'm just using here some examples from our own Mediterranean neighborhood. So we could be goats, sheep, cattle, hogs, or anything, and cereal, vegetables, and anything. So you combine this, you mix them up, and you just have an agroforestry system. So it is quite important, because many times people tell me, okay, so I can do it. I'm just gonna get some trees, plant them here, and get some annual crop, and then also some livestock, and then I have an agroforestry system. Well, it's not so easy, and it's not so simple, because okay, you do get these ingredients, but to make a good food or to prepare a good meal, you need also a good recipe. So this recipe is more or less is the management. So you have to have a management plan, and with this management plan, which is not something that you can apply everywhere, but it is also site and case specific. I will talk about it a little bit further after that. And anyway, so the production, so we can use, why do we need the trees in the agroforestry systems? For production, but also for function, for any type of functions. Because let me remind you that I'm pretty sure that you have heard this before, that you have also these ecosystem services. And you know, there are so many ecosystem services that being provided by trees, that more or less this is why we use the trees for every good that trees do. All this, you name it, where you are, it depends on when you are and what are your priorities. So you need nitrogen fixation in shading, which is quite important. And actually, the shading contribution of trees, it's quite important also, considering the fact that this seminar is talking about climate change. So shading, wind breaks, it's also another characteristic of agroforestry system that has quite a lot of importance, taking into account the climate change situation. And of course, erosion control and define boundaries. Actually, I thought of it after visiting Tunisia, and I think it's a quite classical example of defining boundaries using trees, but also here in Greece and many other locations of Mediterranean country basin. So, okay, so the role of livestock, I'm not going to spend any more time. It's exactly why we use livestock, all the good, and of course, that we take by using livestock. And of course, also that we have to take into account that using livestock comes along with some disadvantages, which means the damage that may be caused to the crops, but also the problems in the regeneration. But as I said before, this is what is management for. you need to have a management. You just cannot leave the livestock in your crops or in your field and your farm and just let them do whatever they want. This is what is management is important. So again, it's not like everybody says, okay, I love palm trees. I'm going to take a palm tree and I'm going to plant it here, which is right now I'm in 1,000 meters altitude. So if someone comes to me and says, I'm going to use a palm because I love palm trees, I'm going to plant some palm trees here because I love it, and I'm going to do an agroforestry system. Well, as I said before, there are some criteria. And actually, this is what we have been working presently of actually of the fields that we have been working on, which is actually the definition of choosing exactly what tree, where, when, and how would be combined with what. These are the basic questions actually, and this is what the management is needed for, because this is what you have to come up and be quite confident that what you do is what is needed, and it's combined well with the environment wherever you are. So more or less, I hope by now you have I've been quite clear of what is agroforestry, and also as I hope I was quite clear to give you be quite certain that so agroforestry is the combination of trees, crops, and animals. And so based on exactly these ingredients, we classify agroforestry systems. So we have the silvo-arable, which is quite clear, means arable, and silvo means trees. So whenever we have systems that we use trees and annual crops, that means silvo-arable. Forest farming is where of course, this is not allowed in many cases, and it's not feasible to take place in many places. But anyway, it's the production of harvesting within the forest. We have the riparian buffer strips, which is very, very much important. We have the improved fallow, we have the multi-purpose trees, and the other major class part of agroforestry system is the silvopasture. Silvopasture means the places that we use trees and livestock for grazing. And so more or less the most popular, the most well-known agroforestry systems are the silvo-arable, silvopasture, and the agro-silvopastoral, which is a combination of all. Okay, so we classify the agroforestry systems based on their components. What do they have? In space, where the trees are and how they are. In time, in the land use, in what is their function. In example, if it's a provisioning, it's a regulating, it's cultural, it's a supporting, the ecological zone that we have, and of course we also use some socioeconomic aspects. And here, if you need more information, you can find it in this publication of Michael Den Herder. So I hope I have convinced you by now that there are many, many biological advantages connected to agroforestry. So more or less in agroforestry, you do what? You use the space, you use everything. You don't leave anything out of it. The presence of the trees actually do what? They actually improve the soil. What from the soil? Anything, all the parameters, all the soil parameters that it's quite important when you do farming. Chemical, physical, biological, anything. Of course, you increase your productivity. Of course, you reduce, or at least you have the potential to reduce soil erosion. Why? Because you have the trees. And the trees, as you know, with their roots, they protect the soil from erosion. And this is one, I chose not to talk about what is climate change, because I think that by now, a lot of my previous presenters must have covered this issue. But as you know, in one of the expression of climate change are the extremes. So with agroforestry systems and the presence of the trees, you do have this reduction. You have the reduced risk of complete crop failure. Why? Because let's say something goes wrong and the weather goes bad and you lose all your annual crop. Well, you still have an income from the production of the trees, or you still have an income from the livestock. So more or less, you, the farmer would be happy because okay, he would be at least not devastated by the fact that even if his annual crop was lost, then again, he would still get something out of his production. So positive use of shade, again, as I said, this is another point that's quite important concerning agroforestry and climate change, because you do get the trees that they protect the annual crops and the livestock. I assume that all of you have seen during the summer that all the animals, the grazing animals, the grazing livestock, what do? They're trying to find a tree and get under the crown and get some shade and protection from the sun irrigation. So you have many advantages. Of course, you have some disadvantages, but as I said before, this is what management is needed for. You do need the management to actually make a sound design, to decrease competition, to decrease the damage, any type of damage. And of course, this is why you need also to be well prepared and well to get a good literature review and see that you don't have any allelopathy problems between your crops and your tree crops and species. Okay, so you have a lot of economic and social advantages, which is like the income. As I said, the farmer gets more money because he gets more products, so it's more secure. So you get a variety of products and variety of ecosystem services. So you have improved, human nutrition. In most of the cases, agroforestry systems are actually organic, so it's higher quality, and so you do get better nutrition. So you do have a crop diversity and a reduced risk. What I said before, you have a reduced establishment cost and distribution of labor. You have improved distribution of labor, because this way the farmer has something to do throughout the year. So, for example, during the summers, he still gets something to be done. In the winter, something to be done. So more or less, he can still work throughout the year. So okay. So what's the problem? The problem is that this climate smart. So I think that by far, I have quite convinced you that the agroforestry is a climate smart farming system. But the problem is lately is being replaced by intensive monocrops. Why? Because it's easier. It's easier in the sense that, as I said, in agroforestry system, you have to think. You have to think of where to place, where and how. In intensive monocrop, it's easier to do just one thing. You have just monocrop. You don't have to worry about anything else. And also, it's intense. Don't forget that when you have the trees, and I'm not believing this, I'm just giving you some examples that have been given by farmers on what was their problem of concerning agroforestry. And they said, well, when I have the tractor, I want just to move from the one side of my field to the other, and I don't want any tree to stand in my way. Okay, yes, if you take it in this base, yes, of course. But the problem is that, as we said before, that taking the climate change, taking into account the fact that with all this intensive agriculture, what you have at the end, you have soil erosion, you have nutrient depletion, and you have biodiversity loss, you have all sorts of problems. Then that means that we really have to reconsider this intensively easiness of cropping, and thinking that maybe, because if my field degrades totally and I lose anything, so what's the point of not of using an intensive agriculture system? So intensive agriculture in general, it's going just to put some pressure on ecosystem sustainability and changing climate conditions. It's going to have a severe problem. And as I said before, I think that by now you must have all have heard other previous presenters about talking about climate change, and I'm pretty sure that they have given you some information concerning the climate change in the Mediterranean basin and the effects of this climate change in this specific region of the world. What region? I'm going to give you some information about this. So really have to believe, we really have to be quite confident and sure that Mediterranean, it's as I call it, it's a biodiversity hotspot. You have everything, and it's quite diverse. It's one of I live in this this location, this basin, so I'm quite proud of it. But I really think that it's a distinct, a unique place of the globe. So here it is. So take into account that you know that there's all variety, all different type of species, all different type of diverse type of species, and the uniqueness of this area of the world is that exactly because the climate was so nice and favorable for human population, it has been more or less populated through time. I think it's one of the few regions, one of the few, I'm not saying that it's the only one, okay? So it's one of the few regions of the world that you have so many and so distinctive cultures and population and human activity through time. So this activity was quite connected to the climate, to the production, to the fertility of the area, and it's an interaction actually, mostly. And a lot of systems have been survived. We have been passed through from time to time, from farming system, farming knowledge. So if you think, I think that by now, I mean, from those who are not familiar with agroforestry, I think that you must now have recognized many of your farming systems in your location, that they're agroforestry. And further ahead in my presentation, I'm going to give you some more information of, so it is agroforestry, what? But in a few minutes. So this hotspot, as I call it, this biodiversity hotspot, this unique place of the world, it's a mixture of bioclimates, of physical environments, human influences through time, and all of these have formed these unique environments. So we have an obligation to preserve this and make sure that under this changing climate, we do everything and we take all the measures to preserve it. So we have these unique Mediterranean forests that they're rich in plant, lush understory, year-round source of feed for livestock. So here you see with this here that this actually forms all the necessary ingredients for an agroforestry system, for a silvopastoral agroforestry system, because you do have the forest, you do have the underground vegetation, so you can always get and have your livestock. So this is why livestock was quite, raising livestock was a traditional activity through time in the Mediterranean. So what are the problems? No problems so far, no? No, we do have some problems. The problems, it's a mixture of ignorance, lack of resources, misuse of resources, and I think it's not only for agroforestry, but generally in farming systems. We have the climate restrictions and the economic limitation. So ignorance, agro what, agro who, and what is this? And in the past, we had some also educational projects like the one you have. It was an Erasmus project. So along with also the Ag-Forward project, we had the opportunity to run many stakeholder meetings and groups throughout Greece, but also in many other countries, So at least for me, the result that I got was an ignorance of people of what is agroforestry, and not just ignorance, but also misunderstanding. In many cases, most of the traditional systems, they are agroforestry, most of the traditional systems. But whenever we would go and tell the farmer, you know what, this is agroforestry, some of them would be, no, it's not agroforestry. It's my farming, whatever I'm doing, and I got it from my father and my grandfather. So more or less, they don't like the word of agroforestry, and because in some people, maybe in agronomists, think that what is forestry has to do in agronomy, and also forester would see what is agronomy is doing in the forestry. So I think I was quite clear so far to clarify that it's a specific land management use. Okay, so, and in some cases, you need the advice of the agronomist. In most of the cases, you need the advice of the agronomist. In some cases, you may need also the advice of the forester. So it's a mixture, and it's not applied everywhere in one. So this is what we're trying to do. I'm a member of the European Agroforestry Network. I'm also a member of, we have here also in Greece, in many other countries, we have some scientific groups that we're trying to make some presentations and explain to people why we're doing this. Because we want to preserve the knowledge, we want to preserve the environment, we want to preserve this type of system, we want to preserve this type of farming design. Lack of resources. In many cases, you have the not available land, a lot of available land. So if you have a farmer and you tell him, you know, you should do an agroforestry system, he's going to tell you, okay, so this is my field, it's the only field I have. I feed my family with the products I produce in this field. So I don't have the luxury to make an experiment and apply agroforestry. Okay, but my question to these people would be, okay, if you do intensive agriculture in this field and the area is not available, it's not prone, it's not good for this, then you may lose your soil. And as you know, and everybody knows, if you lose your soil, then you may as well, there's nothing you can do. It's more or less, it's over. Water limitations. So this is also another issue that is quite connected to climate change, because as you know, in climate change, you have the extreme events, and in some cases you do have the drought or you have the floods. So you have droughts and floods. So as you know, both of them are not the best case scenario to raise crops. In some other cases, you have a lot of lack of infrastructure, but I think that in most of the cases, this is not such a problem. Misuse of resources, soil erosion. Again, as you know, that intensive agriculture, it's quite related in some cases with soil erosion. And this is why we use the trees, because trees with their roots, they preserve the soil. Underground water level, you know that in intensive agriculture, you have to have a lot of use of water. And so you deplete all this underground aquifer. And as you also know, once you destroy your underground aquifer, it's hardly unlikely that it will be able to recover. We have illegal lumbering, which is a very important problem. We have another major problem, which is land use changes, and we have forest fires. So, okay, so agroforestry, we have been able so far to give answers to these questions. Recently, I am the editor of a special issue, which is going to come out pretty soon on agroforestry systems. And more or less in one of the experiments, not mine, that was conducted in China, they have used some markers, and what they have seen was more or less the roots of the trees, they go far below the zone of the roots of the crops. So more or less what the trees do is they pump the water. They also provide for their own actually needs, but they don't compete with water with the crops because the roots of the trees, they go way below. Illegal lumbering, and I'm afraid that this is a major problem, and this has to do with education, which is my concluding remark at the end of the presentation. Land use change. We have done some research also here in Greece, and we have seen that that's a major problem with land use change. Either way, because you have two extremes. You have either the extreme of cutting down forests to convert it to farming, to fields, but also we have the abandonment of the fields, and they become forest. So again, you lose this type of system. And forest fires, actually, one of the latest articles and research we have done conducted last year, more or less we have proven that with agroforestry can contribute positively to confront forest fires. Why? Because just when you have, take it, for example, this picture, you have this sheep here and it's grazing the underground. So more or less what it does, it removes all the inflammatory underground vegetation. So there is more or less no biomass, no food for the fire. So it is a very nice way to help with face forest fires. So another problem that we have, but we are trying as EURAF and as the Hellenic Agroforest Network, we're trying to do a lot of work trying to convince the policymakers that they should not be, agroforestry systems should not be excluded from subsidies, because this is one of the problems that there was there. And you need, and in most of the cases of the farmers that we have asked, their major concern and problem was that they need advice, they need support, which is, I understand that, it's true. And so in agroforestry system, you have the climate restrictions, which is all of the above. You know, in United States, when we were having a test, you always had this A question is something, B question was something, and always the D was D, all of the above options. So yeah, with climate restrictions, you have all of the above problems. So also all of these restrictions and problems you have with agroforestry, they're highly related also to climate change, land use changes, agricultural abandonment, major problem. Impacts related to geographical location, the climate change effects are going to be quite related to the location where you are. And this is my term, knowledge flexibility. What means by that? Means of how would the farmers be willing to listen and be open to new ideas and new options for their farming. And as you understand, we have done, as I said before, we have done many stakeholder meetings, and we have asked a lot of farmers and asked them their opinion. And I can tell you, which is quite normal, that the young people are more willing to listen and adopt some new farming techniques rather than the older farmers. But on the same, on the other side, the older farmers, they are more ecologically oriented. I'm talking about the small farmers, of course. I'm not talking about the intensive agricultural farmers. Okay, so let's see each one of them. Land uses. So here is a very nice picture from silvopastoral system in Greece. It is in Western Greece. It is Quercus ithaburensis subspecies macrolepis. It's oak, Vallonia oak. It's the oak that makes the very big acorns. So here it's a silvopastoral. Why? Because animals graze here throughout the world, and this has been a very traditional system since hundreds of years. So we have studied this system through time, and we found that actually since 1945 there has been some changes in the land uses of the area. And please note the extremes. You have here the extreme. You have the overgrazing here, but in some locations you can see the undergrazing. So again, management, the keyword. Here is another picture from the same. We have some experimental plots in the area. So here you can see our experimental fenced plots. And so here you can see the grazing, the biomass that is removed from the grazing livestock. And here you can see the protected area inside our plot, and you can see the difference. In this area, in this Wallonia oak forest area, silvopastoral system, there have been several attempts, of course, not by intents, there have been several attempts of forest fires. None of them were successful. Why? Because more or less all the underground, the flammable biomass has been removed by the grazing animals. And you can see the difference here. Nothing here, a lot here. So if this biomass, this flammable biomass was here, and let's say, for example, someone by mistake threw his cigarette down, that would have been really burned down, the whole place and the whole area. So yes, animals do, under a sound management, under a sustainable management, they can always protect the area from forest fires. And agricultural abandonment. I'm very happy that I have the opportunity in time to collaborate with a lot of colleagues from other Mediterranean and not only countries. And so by discussing and reading also some papers, I realized that it is a common problem. It's not a Greek problem. I thought that agricultural abandonment was a Greek problem. But then I was discussing with a colleague from Turkey, and he said, yes, we have the same problem. Young people prefer to leave their homeland, their area, and they move to bigger cities. And lately, last week, I was also reading another article from Morocco, and that article was talking about the famous terraces of Morocco. And the author was also actually commenting also the same thing, that young people prefer to leave their villages and move to bigger cities and work in more modern, at least talking about Greece, more modern professions like tourism and everything. So it's a common problem, I think, not throughout the Mediterranean. So we have different impacts of climate change related to the geographical location, and this is what agroforestry can play a major role. Why? Because as I said, you do have the trees protect the crop, so you don't have this intense sun effects from that would normally a monocrop would have. So you can see that's quite important. And there are three more or less levels that agricultural abandonment is affected. The one is by the ecology, it's where you are, or what is the location, the characteristics. And I'm going to make a small stop here, if I may. I hope I have the time. Okay, so the point is that, okay, I'm talking you, I'm presenting all these nice ecological things to do and prevent, blah, 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 blah. But a very important question, an issue to take into account is where we are and how we can use this ecological. Because at the bottom line, when I was talking and presenting all these nice advantages of agroforestry, the farmers would tell me, you know, I have to feed my children, I have to feed my family. All these ecological things are nice, but how can I adopt them? How can I actually act them when I need to feed my family? Okay, so I think agroforestry provides that with the multiple products that I have already said, that provides all these nice opportunities. So it does provide some ecological advantages. And adaptation and management, I think that agroforestry systems are quite more adapted and will be more adapted to climate change. And at the end, knowledge flexibility, this is my term. And as I said, it's how farmers are willing to adopt and adapt new knowledge. So this is what the climate flexibility. For example, here is a beautiful picture from a silvo-arable system. It is actually an agro-silvo-pastoral system. You can see these nice terraces that they are popular throughout, not only to Morocco, but also to Greece. And so you can see these terraces, and you have the trees. These are also Wallonia oak trees. And here you can see the annual crop. And at the end of the annual crop, the farmer usually brings here his livestock, so they just clear the land at the end of the farming season. And another threat that I chose to put it last but not least is the loss of knowledge. So this is a practice that the farmer is doing, and he is 75 years old. If there are no young people to carry on this farming procedure, who will take over? Where would this knowledge be found? Why has he placed the tree here? Why he used this type of crop? Why? We need, I think it's the responsibility of all of us to preserve all this knowledge, so we can be sure and that we carry on this knowledge to the next generations. So the impact related to climate change, the changes in productivity, the expansion of lowland crops, these are all the problems that they're related to climate change. I'm not going to stay to that. I'm just going to tell you how is agroforestry related to that. Because in agroforestry, you do get a variety of products, and also you get the trees that protect the annual crop, so you do preserve your productivity. You have the expansion of lowland crops and intensive farming systems to the higher elevations. Again, in agroforestry systems, you do get this diverse, so you get with this diverse farming mixtures of trees and ingredients, you do get the flexibility to have a more adaptable to climate change system. Reduction of biodiversity, but having all this this mixture of tree, crop, and species, you do preserve biodiversity. So yes, agroforestry systems are we do preserve biodiversity, and there have been quite some articles, some research done that do actually confirm this. And also don't forget all the regulation services provided, the ecosystem services, pest regulation and pollination. Well, in one of our, okay, this is not so well, but in one of our the research that one of my colleagues has done, they have found that agroforestry can provide actually some nesting places to preserve the pollination of the area. So why is agroforestry a promising option to face climate change? Here I'm using the IPCC. You know what's IPCC. I assume by now you have all been aware of what's IPCC. So adaptation to climate change is an adjustment in natural or human systems in response to actual or expected climatic stimuli or other effects, which moderates harm and exploits beneficial opportunities. I think this is a definition given by IPCC. I think, but by now you might have seen that agroforestry really meets a lot of these parameters. So how can we do that? We can use some new crop varieties and some livestock species that are better suited to drier conditions. And you can also do the crop diversification and the adoption of mixed cropping and livestock farmings and changing planting dates. Well, this is what's actually agroforestry. So you do get the opportunity, and you do get actually the flexibility again to do that. And how do we do that? Education, for me, it's very important. What you do, what this actually seminar is doing, and other seminars that I have been attending, it's very much important. This is why I also do it, and we do participate, and we try to spread the word, because education, I think it's where everything starts and everything ends. So information, which is quite related, and as I said, management. We have been working in an Erasmus, as I told you before, project is the Agroforestry, and another workshop that has been organized in Hungary, and now it's yours, which is quite important. So here there's a lot of more and more in time increasing number of seminars or actions that are related to realizing the need of agroforestry or another farming system that would actually adopt and adapt to climate change. And here is another, I'm going to show you now some of our own research results. Here is from the olive agroforestry in Greece, in Chalkidiki. It's northern Macedonia, in North Macedonia. So here you have used, you can see the trees, and between the trees we have been using different varieties, and the results were excellent. And the person response here, you can see the citation of this. It has been just released and just been published. And the agronomist who was actually taking care of this experiment, he had the best things to say about the results. So everybody was very happy. Here is from Crete. Crete, you can see you have this the silvopastoral system where you have the orange trees, and in between you have the livestock. In this type, you have the chicken. So you can see how clear the land is. You don't have any underground. You know how chicken are. So more or less you have free use of resources. You also get the organic meat and the organic eggs and everything. See here, it's also from Crete, from this silvoarable system. So more or less in Crete, when they switch varieties of the oranges, and that takes about 15 years to get another good production of oranges. So what they do in the lost space, the open space that is been created by this transition, so what they do is they use some annual crops, some vegetables and everything. So more or less they take a full advantage of their space. And here is another picture from one of our experiments. This is from central Greece. And what we did here, you can see the olives. Here in Greece, traditionally, in the old time, the olives were planted between 10 meters away, the one row from the other. And the farmers traditionally, what I told you also before, this is the tradition, and we need to take advantage of this traditional knowledge and heritage. For me, it's a heritage. So anyway, in our experiment, what we did was we have cultivated in between the olive trees chickpeas. You know chickpeas, a very traditional crop, very nutritious. And our results revealed that in the area that we have used chickpeas, we didn't apply any nitrogen fertilization, but the nitrogen level of this area compared to the control that received no chickpeas, but were more or less, but received chemical fertilizer, nitrogen fertilization, were more or less the same. And this is from another area around here. It's actually walnuts, and during the winter, not in between the space that is being used, we have the winter cultivations. And so more or less to conclude, we have numerous ecological and economic advantages of agroforestry. You use 3 species that they actually are adopted or will be adapted or are adapted to climate change, and the location, the climate. And so it is an intensive, and it is the land management system, and it's a system that will actually advance and support the rural development. So to conclude, agroforestry represents a sustainable farming option in the Mediterranean region. And thank you very much for the attention. And you can see actually the background. I don't know if you can see my background from right now where I am. And this is a picture from northern Spain. It is from Bosques Naturales. and it's a huge area that they are actually using to cultivate, to grow of high value wood come from walnuts. And they had a severe problem with underground vegetation, with inflammatory underground vegetation. So what they did was they used a flock of sheep. So this flock of sheep goes around the area throughout the day, and they manage in this way to get a very nice and ecologically sound and sustainable sound and all these good things way of confronting the problem of the underground vegetation. So thank you very much. I'm here to answer to any question you may have.
Thank you, Professor, for this very interesting and full of information presentation. It's true that we have to reconsider many practices that we already use, and maybe we have to rediscover or reinvent the traditional systems, adapted, of course, to the modern era, but we can get many useful practices from the traditional systems. I would like to have some questions from the audience. Maybe some, if anyone has something to say. No, I think you were very, it was a very nice presentation, Professor. Everyone.
Just have a, may I ask a question?
Of course.
Just an opinion. Good morning, Anastasia. I am Riccardo Fortina from Italy. I am an animal producer. I'm not dealing with plants, but a general question I would like to ask you is, what do you think about the two ways that we use for improving productivity? I mean, we talk about agroecology or agroforestry systems and sustainable intensification of cropping or animal producers. These two way of looking at the development of agriculture in the future, sustainable intensification or agroecology or agroforestry, it's a doubt that most of us have, and personally I don't have any answer. Which one of the two will be the best?
It is agroecology. Agroecology, it's okay. Agroecology means ecology in agriculture. There is a movement lately, the agroecological movement, but agroecology, it's actually, agroforestry is has a lot of relation, is agroecology in many ways. Because what is agroecology is adopting all the ecological principles to agriculture. So if you use your land in this sustainable way, you are using agroecological farming system. So it is very, I mean, for me, because lately I was quite concerned about that, because I know this agroecological movement, which is, I know the definition provided and everything, but it is agroforestry is agroecology. And in most of the cases, of course, when you use I have given you a lot of examples of mostly traditional, but we have also cases you have more intensive agroforestry, modern agroforestry systems. Okay, in most of the cases in agroforestry, you do get an ecological way of using your land. So it is agroecology in most of the cases. And we have, I mean, I have been visiting, I was quite fortunate to visit many farms throughout Europe and Northern Africa, and I have seen how amazingly, and I'm very, very much impressed of how people, that's what I said, we need to preserve these systems. I have seen so many ideas of so many ways, so many ecological ways of raising the farm, of raising the livestock. For example, in France, there was a farmer that he has divided more or less his farm in different locations and different areas. So more or less, by the time that he was done with the annual crop of, I don't remember, maize, whatever, he would move his pig there. He would in all of his areas and his small plots, he would all have trees around the farm. Right. For feed, for the leaves, for the roots, for everything. So this guy was so impressed. I mean, and I think he's the future of farming. And he was also quite happy with the production because, as I said, we need at the bottom line. I do talk about ecology. I'm very happy with it. I can tell you many things. I teach ecology to my students. So I can talk to you about for 6 months about ecology. But at the bottom line, you are a farmer, okay? So I have to think of the farmer. So you have to think of the farmer needs, and I have to think of how can I connect the ecology and the farmer and bind them together under the framework of the changing climate. Because if I only talk about ecology, or if I only talk about farming, then I miss the big picture.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Do we have another question? No? Okay. So we can move on to our next presenter, Assistant Professor Georgios Fotiadis. Professor, you can start.
Thank you. And source, Lasagna. Thank you. Okay. Hello from me too. Thank you for the invitation. I will present you some different things about the evolution of vegetation in natural ecosystem and the possible impact of climate change. Okay, I'm George Fotiadis, yes, from the Department of Forestry and Natural Environment Management of the Agricultural University of Athens. In a standard hypothetical model, after any disaster, such as fires, floods, where the vegetation will be removed, will disappear actually, theoretically. Sorry. Because, so you can see my presentation?
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry, because I've lost my presentation now. I don't know why.
We can see it though.
I'm not see anything from this. Okay, anyway. So in a standard hypothetical model, after any disaster, such as fires, floods, where the vegetation will be removed, will totally disappear. Theoretically, in the first stage, in the area that has been destroyed, will be established annual herbaceous and mainly light-demanding species. The most important thing is that will be light-demanding species. As it is understood, shade-tolerant species, meaning that species which do not want direct sunlight, at least in the first years of their development, will not survive. Gradually, light-demanding shrubs will begin to settle in the area. You can see here from the Prespa area in northwest Greece, while the herbaceous vegetation will begin to thicken and the soil will begin to improve. Thus, woody light-demanding species will gradually begin to prevail. Later, light-demanding trees, as we are calling it, pioneer species like pines, will completely dominate the area. Obviously, these changes take many years to occur. At this stage, however, the light-demanding will no longer be able to emerge in the understory as there is more intense shading from the dominant trees. Thus, shade-tolerant species will begin to emerge that will gradually dominate and regenerate continuously without any other change. So we have at this stage of evolution, what we call the final or the last, or more precise, the climax plant community. But it's not always like that. For example, usually during the evolution, usually at the stage, mostly from the stage of light demanding trees to the shade tolerant plants, we have the concentration of high amount of biomass, because we have together light demanding species and shade tolerant species. The same happens with the evergreen broadleaf plant communities in the Mediterranean area, as known as maki or machi. So the concentration of the biomass may lead to wildfires. In general, as Professor Pandera said, the abandonment observed in recent decades in the countryside in Greece, but also in many other countries of Europe and the Mediterranean area, results in the thickening of forests or shrublands and the increase of their biomass, which in combination with climate change, like drought and higher temperatures, can even lead to mega wildfires, which destroy everything. We had in Greece 2 mega wildfires. It was in 2007 in Peloponnesus area, and in 2018, if I remember well, in Mati area. And both of these wildfires was due to the concentration of the biomass in the forest that will begin the wildfire. Climate change is not only drought or higher temperatures, but also intense phenomena such as floods. These either come after wildfires or individually results in soil erosion. However, soil erosion, again, may result in the loss of the seed bank storage that exists in the soil, which otherwise will help in the regeneration of the species, and finally, the regeneration of vegetation. So then the big question, what species will settle in the area? Probably the same, or probably some other that are adapted to more extreme conditions. What appears, however, is that some species will not be able to keep up with these changes and survive. But moreover, there are some species that require a specific condition to survive, such as the plants that their distribution is in the Mediterranean highland swamps, which are usually dependent on rainfall. So the reduction rainfalls will lead to their extinction. You can see here a species from the genus Drosera, insectivorous species of genus Drosera, which is adapted to this kind of swamps. And of course, it will disappear if the swamp will not have any water. This is from Rhodope Mountain from northeast Greece. And you can see here also how this insectivorous plant caught an insect with his sticky hairs. The same happens with other species that are rare or have a small distribution area, such as the species of the photo, Felippaea boisieri, which is its distribution in Greece is limited in a small meadow of few 100 square meters. The other areas that this species, the particular species, Felippaea boisieri, distributed in the whole world is in North Macedonia, Turkey, and Mountain Everest, but again with a very small population. We said about 400 to 500 individuals in every area. So the extinction of this species, the particular meadow in Greece, will have as a result the reduce of its total population of the world by 1/4. And it's supposed that its distribution is in Europe and Asia, but actually is in only 4 small meadows in 4 isolated areas. But let's go back to, let's go back to the evolution of vegetation. The evolution of vegetation is not always done in the same way. As many times, there are some factors that do not allow us to reach to that we call climax plant community, the final plant community. So, like here in Chalkidiki Peninsula, pine forests, like other ecosystems, are adapted to fires. But fires, wildfires, that take places in every few decades, like 60 or 70 or 80 years. The presence of human, together with the most intense droughts and higher temperatures, increase the frequency of wildfires. So the probability of the vegetation's survival decreases in these ecosystems. At the same, also we have this thing again from Chalkidiki. In salt meadows, we cannot have the typical evolution of vegetation like here in sand dunes due to the high salinity. Both photos are from Chalkidiki Peninsula. But those ecosystems have adapted to these conditions, these hard conditions, with sunlight and drought, contributed significantly to biodiversity. We have here a lot of rare species. Extreme weather events, like we said before, higher temperatures or probably sea level rise, will also affect these sensitive ecosystems. But again, in the high mountains, on the other hand, we have different situations. Forests, like here, from the species Pinus heldreichi, an endemic species of Balkan Peninsula in Italy, due to the strong winds and the snow, you can imagine, we are here in 2,500 meters above the sea level in Mountain Olympus in Greece. The trees do not come out vertically to the ground, but sideways. Even more extreme conditions like snow or winds, or on the other hand, rise of temperature in the area will be prohibited for the development of this forest. As you can understand, this forest is completely adapted, this kind of forest is completely adapted to these conditions of Mountain Olympus. But even higher, again in Mountain Olympus, it is impossible to have forests. Here, on the peaks of Olympus, although you can think that there are no plants, it's a rock, there are several species that are fully adapted to the conditions. In fact, many of them, more than 10 or 15, I say, exist only here. In this photo, you can see there are 15, at least 15 species that exist only here and nowhere else in the world. These species are adapted completely in these hard conditions. But these species, like here, you can see Campanula oreadu growing inside these rocks, have a very small distribution area and have many very specific requirements because they are adapted to this area. So with the slightest change in the climatic conditions, they are immediately is in danger of extinction. But however, to return again and connect my presentation with the presentation of Professor Pantera, one of the most important factors in controlling the evolution of vegetation, at least in the Mediterranean area, basin, is grazing. Overgrazing, from the one hand, we have overgrazing, like here in Eastern Crete, can lead to degradation of the vegetation. We don't have this hypothetical model of the evolution of vegetation, and may lead to desertification, especially in conjunction with climate change. Even though in these areas, the plant species are adapted to overgrazing, not only from human, but before human come to Earth. We should not forget that species are adapted to grazing, like this species you can see here, long before humans start to have livestock. So many species will be lost if the grazing will stop. But climate change will change a lot of things if we have overgrazing. On the other hand, you can see here in the photo on the left, grazing, normal grazing, it helps maintain the diversity. Diversity seems to be an even temporary solution to the vegetation of natural ecosystems in the face of climate change. As among many species, which will have great genetic diversity, can be found those which will adapt and survive in the climate change. On the other hand, you can see in the left a forest of fir. We have problems because the dominant species is one, and the climate change will affect immediately on these ecosystems, known now as green desert, because they don't have diversity. Evolution stops for other reasons also. And you can see here is shrublands from central Greece, near the city of Lamia. You can see here these yellow shrubs is actually Spartium junceum, a species which is how to say, is very strong, is adapted to many areas, to many different environments. But before 2 years, start all the individuals in this area to dying without any particular reason. We don't know. We don't have until now know why this happened. As you can see, it's not only maybe some diseases or insects. It's not only the abiotic factors that affect with climate change the forest and the evolution of the forest, but also biotic factors. Here you can see a fir forest. I think it's from Karpenisi area, from central Greece again. You can see the fir forest and some dying, actually, firs. I think that in forest department they had a project for this event, this thing, and found that the water potential inside the trees was so low that actually all of these trees, even the green one we can see in the photo, should have died years ago. And they suppose that probably climate change, without a lot of rainfalls or snow during the actually the spring, has resulted in this situation. And finally, we can see here from Mountain Pieria is a forest of Scotch pine, Pinus sylvestris. Mountain Pieria is near to Mountain Olympus in Greece. Is the southernmost limit of distribution of this particular pine in the Balkan Peninsula. In this area, there used to be some insect and some fungus, but before 20 years, one particular insect and one particular fungus, they start to attack this species, and now almost all the forest is dead because of this, together with a wildfire during 2012, I think, if I remember well. Almost all the forest is completely dead. The Department of the Forest Department tried to do a lot of things in order to save the species and the forest, but most of the scientists that dealing with this issue, they believe that is the change, the climate change that affect this ecosystem and turn the balance, destroy the balance in this forest. Thank you very much. I was very short to my presentation.
Thank you, Professor. Very short, but you provided very useful information and very nice pictures, so it was very nice. I think that maybe the conclusion from all this is that agriculture, forestry, and animal production should finally work together and cooperate in order to preserve nature and biodiversity in many areas. So I will give also the opportunity for the audience if we have any questions. And maybe until the audience thinks of something, I can say that for the connection to the previous matter that Professor Pantera and has said, maybe agroecology, it's only just a fancy word to describe what we always say, traditional practices, traditional ecosystems. Probably people before us who had the knowledge gained from practice mainly, knew in many ways how to manage such ecosystems. Then we came with our intensive agriculture and our eagerness to make a lot of product, so in order to make a lot of profit. And suddenly in the past years, we forgot many of these aspects. It's time to reinvent them. It's never too late. And climate change, it's gonna push us towards that direction, either we like it or not, maybe. So please, do we have any questions for our speakers? Do we have any opinions that maybe want to be expressed here? No? Okay. I will urge you to check the CLICHA website, where you can find many useful information regarding climate change in general, plants and animal production, forestry, water management, and other very interesting issues. And you can also check our website to see our future webinars and our future planned actions. I would like to thank very much to Professor Pantera and Professor Fotiadis for their time, their very nice presentations, and hopefully we'll have the opportunity to work again together and see all these issues. So if we don't have any other someone from the audience, no. Thank you very much. It was a very nice evening. Thank you all.
Thank you.